Being the appointed hour, I'll call the committee to order. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
I have a motion made by Senator Murphy, seconded by Senator Susie, to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. We are in executive session, and we're going to skip the first one on the list because I think I want to make sure Senator Perkins Coca is happy that we put the information from her bill into Senate Bill 489, if my memory serves me properly. Let me just get out my notes. But we'll come back to that should she arrive or after we do the hearings. In fact, here she is. In fact, and we believe that we put 489. 489. Okay. All right. So in case we need that bill for something else, I intend to just hold on to it for a while and then we'll take care of it after.
Thank you for incorporating, Chair.
No problem. Okay, next one on the list is 483. 383, excuse me. Yep.
Everybody, but I have copies.
Thank you. I believe this is the one, yes.
Yeah.
We can distribute.
0790?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
Do you need it, Senator Perkins Coker? Yes, I only have 0636.
Okay.
you. Okay, I've already got a copy. So the
Thank you.
audience may need some.
Cam was out yesterday, so we're still catching up.
Okay, Senator Murphy, why don't you go through that for us?
All right. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move all to pass on Senate Bill 383.
Well, I don't want to take a motion quite yet, if I could. I want to have a little discussion before we do that.
Sure.
Because I think the first time I saw this was over the weekend, and so I want
The
you to tell
amendment,
me.
Mr. Chairman, addresses the concerns that were brought forward by the New Hampshire Municipal Association on the letter of dated February 12th. I took careful notes of the specific changes they requested. I found them all to be reasonable. I believe that they were addressed by this amendment.
Okay.
Create the definition.
Senator Susie and Senator Perkins Coker, have you had a chance to review this? All right, I think that
you
tells
do-
me the answer is no,
You want
so
to hold off on it?
I'm going to hold off on that until next week and give us all a chance to actually read it. Okay?
Just one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Gray, so Senator Murphy, the Municipal Association's letter says, consider using the language on population estimates from RSA 78, A25-3. Is that where some of this language comes from? Yes.
I have not made the comparison personally,
Okay.
so it's probably a good idea to hold off on this until I physically do that. They were
Okay.
instructed, OLS was instructed to use that language,
Okay.
but I
all
always
right.
feel better if I check it myself.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll take a look before next week. Thank you.
And Trish, if you would make sure that we send a copy to Municipal Association so we can get their comments, I'd appreciate that also. Okay. 384. Certainly, we have the amendment from Senator Fenton. It doesn't do anything that I was interested in and talked about at the hearing. It spends another $10 million for homeless stuff, and we've already put $40 million plus into the last budget. I can't support it, but if I do quick counting, I don't know whether I have the votes to move this forward until Senator Abbas gets here, maybe. So, comments? Okay, so that's a hold till Senator Abbas gets here. Just, must be experience or something. I don't know. Okay. Haverhill and Woodsville, just to bring you up to speed. We had a meeting. It was pretty much a morning and afternoon session. I think that there's movement on the fire department, but I want to hear that from the people in Woodsville. The offer that I heard about the fire department would have been attractive to me, where they would keep their fire department, they would keep the manning that they have there, they would have a captain and lieutenant assigned to their the chief's position in Woodsville would go away, and whether that person became one of the other people there. And there was even discussion that in the other village districts in Haverhill, they were actually paying rent to the village district for the buildings that they were in. So I think there's some movement there. There is a new amendment that I put into draft. And again, what it says is, this is what you got to do unless you come up with your own agreement. And I sent that to Senator Perkins Coker last week. And one thing that she put in there that we have talked about is some kind of a sharing, not just on the number of miles of road for the highway department, but also putting in a function that had to do with, and I think yours was assessment, right?
Yep.
And certainly if you look back at the 2019, I believe, agreement that was in law at that time, is that it was, the compensation was going to be based on the assessment. I'm not overly happy with the half, but that would be the midpoint between not basing it on that and basing it solely on that. So that may be further discussions will go on in Haverhill and Woodsville, and certainly that may be my uncomfort in our reaching consensus, is that that I would or wouldn't put that into the final bill. But the real solution to this, and I'll let you speak in just a second, I believe is getting them to sign agreements that they control, and that they don't have to come back to this state house again as long as they keep an agreement in force. Okay, and that's really the goal of this. Senator?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chairman. I agree with you, and I appreciate your work on this process, and I think you've been listening to everybody, and I think we'd all like to see them come to their own agreement, not only because we hope that we can all work together, but also because there's 114 village districts in our state, and we want to make sure that they all can work out what they need to do. So I think there's been good progress, and I'm hopeful we'll get there.
And part of what my philosophy is that if a village district wants to do something that the town is either doing, in their opinion, inadequately or not well enough or whatever the reason, is that the town should not be compensating that village district any more than what it would cost if they were to provide the service that they're providing to the rest of the town or the other village districts. And so it comes to mind that in your markup of what I sent you, you put in the highway garage. And the reason I took that out is they would need a highway garage anyway. And but again, we're still in negotiation. The next meeting is the 11th here. It was getting harder and harder to find a time and place where we could all get together. So we'll see what happens. Further comments on that before we move on? Okay, seeing none. Senate Bill 532. We have an amendment from Senator Carson that takes care of my concerns about if they didn't have a website.
I'll stay for the vote, Mr. Chair, but I have to go speak in the chamber and
Okay. I will move ought to pass as
Second.
amended. Second by Senator Susie. Further comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. We'll move the amendment number 0710S. I'll move it.
second.
Okay, back to the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And bill as amended, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and I'll take that one out. Next one I have on my list is 532. 534. 534, you're correct. I got a new prescription, and I think they're worse than my old glasses, but I'll argue with them on that. Okay, you have in front of you Amendment 2024-0555S. There are two things that I would need to have in a committee amendment. And if we go to page 8 of that amendment,
And this is 0555S. Yeah.
555S, yes. And it replaces all, so if we vote the amendment, that's what we will be voting. But on line 7, or 6 and 7, I questioned the construction of the way they did that. And the drafter told me, well, it would be taken care of in enrolled bills. But I think it makes it much clearer if 6 stays the way it is that you repeal 4 and 5, and that what was 6, they renumbered as 3, you just leave it as 6.
Mm.
And that would make it clearer, you know, what you're really trying to do.
Mhm.
And she says that's one way to fix it. Thank you. And so that's the first part of what I would want to have as a committee amendment. Page 11 or 12. Thank you. Line 35. It currently says advocate the success of defeat of, and so I think we ought to change one of those of to an or. So it read advocate the success or defeat of a warrant article. page 12, line 35. Okay, advocate the success of, defeat of, and the first of should be an or. So advocate the success or defeat of a warrant article. Further comments, questions on this one?
Well,
That was a
Chair-
big sigh.
yeah. I probably would like to have Senator Susie present for this vote, if you wouldn't mind the
Will.
courtesy.
We'll put that in the pile waiting for a senator.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. 24, 536. Now, on this one, I had a note that says page 1, line 4 and 5. Certainly, it's no secret that I am not in favor of no excuse absentee voting. All you have to do is look back at my records. So I think I could vote this one out, but again, it may be one that would be politically better for me to wait until both Senator Abbas and Senator Susie are here.
Senator Abbas.
And Senator Abbas just showed up, but I'm in a hurry, but not that big a hurry, so we'll hold on that one
Okay.
till later today. I do want to get it out of the way. All right, 537, I think that I promised Senator Susie that I would work on this, and I have not done so. If there's anyone else who's worked on it, that's fine. I was willing to do a little bit of trading about processing ballots ahead of time. But with Woodsville coming up and distracting, something about a tree falling down on my rental property that my daughter's living in have taken up a lot of my time. So I've got that one marked down as needs work. The next one on the list is 538, and that's the zoning, and we had two that were going to work on it, so I'll shut up and listen to you.
Yeah, on SB 538, so I don't have an amendment that's ready for today, but I have had some productive conversations, including with Senator Murphy. I am finishing drafting an amendment, which I would like to circulate to all of you prior to bringing it to the committee, which I should have in the next couple of days, but I just wanted to have enough conversations about it to make sure I had addressed what everybody had raised.
I think it's fair to say we have some common ground.
Yeah.
on this.
Okay. And so we'll put that one on hold also. So just to recap for you, Senator Abbas, we're three bills that we've got that we're going to talk later today is 384, 534, and 536. And some of those are a little bit touchy politically. Disagreements between us on the committee, so we will wait for the whole committee to be here hopefully, and we'll get those done. At least have a more of a conversation about them. And we only execed out one bill, and that was one of Senator Carson's bills. And it came on a 4-0 vote. Okay, so do I have a motion to come out of the executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We're out of executive session, and as soon as the aid is ready, we will open the public hearing on House Bill 115. I know it's early in the day, but, you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready? Okay. And with that, we will open the hearing on House Bill 115 and ask the prime sponsor to introduce himself and his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of
Or
the,
maybe you're not prime sponsor, but,
no, I was prime sponsor of the amendment.
okay. Prime sponsor of the amendment, all
Okay.
right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Senate Municipal and Election Law. I'm Ralph Bohm. I'm the Vice Chair of Election Law, Hillsborough District 14, Town of Litchfield. This amendment bill changed the primary date to the third Tuesday in August. This is the only date that will work for the upcoming election. Every other date stays the same. We currently have a problem with the primary being in September. There's a 45-day federal limit as to when absentee ballots have to be sent out. If there are recounts or affidavit ballots, this could put us in jeopardy in meeting that federal law. There are 14 other states with their primary in August. This will make it 15. If we had a primary in June, that would mean filing in March, which is already passed, during town meetings, which cannot happen this year. Then watching ads on TV from June to November is bad enough from September to November. And what is happening in June? There's school graduation, camps, vacations, etc. People argue that vacations in August does not seem to be a problem in 14 other states. But then we have absentee ballots. The Secretary of State testified that they would like an August date. This passed the House by bipartisan vote of 281 to 82. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my questions. Good to see you, Representative. So I know as a member of the House last term, I believe I voted for a similar version of this. I forget if it was the same Tuesday, and it suffered an unfortunate fate. With that being said, is there any change that this won't suffer the same fate, even if we were to pass it? Because I know the bill we passed in the Senate had a June primary date. I know that won't work this cycle, but my understanding is that provided it makes it out of the House, has the legs to become law.
But well, my point is, the only thing that will work this year, because we're keeping everything else the same, you're still filing June, but we're moving it up a couple of weeks into August, which is what the Secretary of State wanted. Last term, we had the bill in August that was vetoed, but that was the then Secretary of State didn't want it changed, but now the Secretary of State wants it changed to August.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I go to my exec session.
All right,
Good to see you, Representative.
and hope you have a good time. Kim?
Thank you very much. So I'm Representative Timothy Horgan, Stratford County District 10, the towns of Durham, and I've introduced, many years ago, I introduced two August primary bills, which did not pass. Ironically, the second time I tried it was in 2011 when they said, well, I mentioned you have a 49-day window between, I guess, every so often you have a 49-day window between the primary and the general election, which is very short. And then 2011, the House Election Law Committee one of the reasons they rejected it is because like 2022 was so far away that this is something that should be taken up closer to 2022, and 2022 is come and gone. I actually had a contested primary, so I had a recount, and it worked out okay, but it was pretty tough. So I prefer I think the August primary is better than the current September primary. I do think having one late in the summer is, I think the 14 other states, and we're one, and then there's ourselves in Massachusetts and other have September primaries. I think those 15 or 16 states have it right. So I think having the primary in June or even earlier, I think some are even having their primaries this week. That's just much too long a time. Letting the primary election go on, campaigns going on over the summer, I think it's better for the voters, gives them more choices. It also means the person who's chosen in the primary will be chosen on the basis of issues that are on people's minds, shortly before November. If you have one in January, June, or even earlier, then people might make the choice based on one set of issues, and then like it gives you 5 months for other things to happen. And also here in New Hampshire, I know this also applies to Vermont. We have a large, the Senate's not so big, but we have a large House of Representatives with 400 members. If we had the primary in June, we would be having our primary campaigns at the same time as we're legislating, and that would be, I think, that would not be good. That would not be fair to the legislators for various reasons, including the fact a lot of us probably make up our minds depending on how we feel after the legislative session is nearly over, like whether we want to go through it again. So I'll say I'm working on the decision. I think I'm going to come out in favor of running again, for better or worse. So I think an August primary would be preferable. The bills that I introduced, which was 15 and 16 years ago, were for the have one on the last Thursday in August, and but the third the third Friday in August is only 1 or 2 weeks earlier than that. And also, another factor is in most towns, the only place you can have the election is a school, and that's problematic because for various reasons, because that disrupts the school process, especially since many schools don't feel comfortable having the general public wandering around the building at the same time the students are there. Some of those schools, including those in my school district, take a day off from school. So having that in June would be very bad. Having September is okay. In August, either school hasn't quite started yet, or it's less disruptive to have a day off because sometimes they combine it with teacher training and so forth. So I would just say a late summer primary is better. So I think the bill is written is preferable to the June alternative, and it's probably slightly better than the status quo. And even though I noticed my old friend, former President Bob Perry, signed it in opposition, so that gives me some pause to think whether I made the right choice.
Testifying about yourself. not
Testifying about me,
other
yes. So I think we should have an August primary, preferably. So the third works well. I would probably prefer the fourth or the last, and so I'm mostly my first choice is have the August primary, and then my second choice is stick with having one in September, and then June. I would say no, that's a bad idea, and we can't do it this cycle anyway because it's too late. So the filing period would have to be right now. So that's my testimony in favor of it. So I urge you to pass the bill either as is or move it back a week or two. So
questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. There's only one other person who has signed up and does not wish to speak. What did we have for people signing up online? We had one person sign up online in support. And is there anyone who's changed their mind? Okay, not seeing any. We'll close the public hearing on House Bill 115. Just a note, I have been asked by Senate President and the Chief of Staff not to exec any House bills until we get later down the stream so that we don't confuse everyone that's going along. So that one will wait. Okay, we are past the time. As soon as you're ready, Trish, we'll open the public hearing on House Bill 476. And Rep. Barry, come on up.
Representative Gagny,
Gagny. All right. So we have Representative Gagny sitting in for Representative Barry. And if you'd introduce yourself and the bill.
For the record, my name is Representative Larry Gagny. I'm from Hillsborough District 16, which is Manchester's Ward 6, which is the reason behind this bill. I'm glad I came. I actually was not going to come today, but I'm glad I did because none of the big guns are here. And the reason this bill has been introduced because of the hassle that I went through. My wife and I holding hands for about 6 hours the first time, and then 2.5 hours in the Superior Court here in Concord, and then another 6 hours on the second recount because an honest mistake was made. On election night, I was up by 26 votes. And Maxine Mosley, who's running against me, properly asked for a recount, which is proper. On the recount night, the first recount, I was down by 1 vote. Now, if you know how this works, they count the ballots by stacks of 25. So obviously, in my opinion and the opinion of others, that there was a discrepancy from the election night vote count and the first recount vote count. And so a recount, the Secretary of State, who's not here, asked for a recount. The recount was not done, in other words, on that first one. And of course, it went to court because the RSA states that once a recount is done, it's done. You cannot have a second recount. So in defense terms, if I was a defense attorney, I'd say, I'm looking for another bite at the apple, right? And I think it's a good idea that if a discrepancy is made on the election night ballot total and the first recount total, if there's a discrepancy in the total count, I believe that there should be a second recount, which is why I'm in favor of this bill.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify, in your circumstance, when they did the recount, which the recount itself is perfectly proper to do, your total vote count went down, is that correct?
That is correct, by 25 votes. And if you understand how the recount is done, the ballots are counted in stacks of 25 per 100. And there were about 4 other recounts taking place. So, people were trying to tell me, no, tell them that they made a mistake. They deliberately did. No, I don't think so. I think it was an honest mistake. And I think that because of that a second recount should be available.
Just to follow, Mr.
Follow
Chairman.
up.
And by going down exactly 25, which is, the same amount as the piles that they're separated in, did that change the outcome that would have changed the outcome of the election, had that been final?
Yeah, I would have ended up with 26 votes up. If that stack of 25 had been counted, then the election night totals would have been the same as the recount total. I would have been up by 26 votes. Because that's how it turned out.
Thank you.
Senator Murphy?
Thank you. Representative Gagnon, you may not know the answer to this. I wish Secretary of State's office was here. The bill requires a second recount if the first recount basically overturns the result. How frequent is that? Do you have any idea? Obviously, it happened in your case, but does it happen 10 times an election?
I really don't have an honest answer to that, but I would think in my 16 years here in the House of Representatives that there have been very few.
I recall seeing one when in my years in the House. I just wanted to know if anybody has any idea how frequent that happens. Thank you.
Senator Evans, you had another question?
In Rochester, we had an interesting, it was, a person was behind by one vote, did a recount end up tying, and then that, that played itself out a different way.
Let me add into this conversation. And just so that everyone knows that we've had problems with not the proper amount of ballots being brought to the recount. Okay, and so to take care of that, what we did is we said that you have to count the overvotes and the undervotes, okay? And that way that the total that you get from the recount for number of votes should equal the number of voters, or if it's a vote for 2, a vote for 3, a vote for 4, the multiple of the number of voters, okay? So from your testimony, and this is where the question comes in, did that total vote not reflect the number of people who voted at that day on the polls, and it was off by 25?
You talking about election night, or you talking about the recount?
Both, actually.
Well, I'm really not cognizant on all this stuff. I'm just a high school graduate. I'm just a plain loading and unloading trailer trucks for a living until I got hassled by Representative Infantine into running for office back in 2008. My understanding is everything is done, the total votes cast on the election night. And that's what, apparently something went wrong on the first recount. And so on the second recount, what they did is they counted the total amount of votes cast on election night, and there was a discrepancy between the total that I got on a recount and the total that was on election night. Perhaps Senator Susie would have more of an idea because she's really into this. I'm not. I just, I either win or lose, and I just run on the record. So however it turns out is how it turns out. I'm fortunate that it ended up going to Superior Court, which I used to be, when I was a cop in Manchester, I was on the other end of this. I was not like involved directly in, to be decided whether I'm going to be in office or I'm not going to be in office. And my wife and I went through hell.
So second follow-up question on that would be, with the procedure of counting the votes, counting the undervotes, counting the overvotes, and being able to verify the number of ballots that were there, would have pointed out that 25 ballots were missing. And if I put into the law, instead of what you've got written here, is that the Secretary of State shall not declare a winner in that until, he has exhausted to resolve that. Wouldn't that get us there and we'd still be under the first recount?
You're asking the question that really, honestly, in all honesty, I don't have the answer to.
I said it as much for other people as I did for you, so that's fine. All right. Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
don't see any other questions, and we will continue on here. Let's see. We've got 3 other people signed up, and none of them wish to speak. And 2 are in opposition, 1 is in support. What do we have for people online?
Online, there were 2 opposed.
2 opposed online. Okay, has anybody changed their mind and now wants to testify? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing on this. And again, I'll repeat that we're not going to exec any of the House bills for a while, so that keep them separated for right now. And we will take a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. We are in executive session. if you leave it with me for too long, it gets lost and never found. That would be terrible. Take care now.
Thank you.
Since we are in executive session, just a comment on the primary one. That if we were to take any action on that primary one, since it would, the people want it to go into effect for this year, it might have to be done sooner than later. So just that comment, anybody else that wants to comment, we won't
I would just say
exec
that
it at this point.
at this point, any change for this current election, I don't think is feasible for either the Secretary of State or a local official. As much as I support changing the date, I just don't know that it could happen for 2024.
The other concern, Mr. Chairman,
Sir,
if we were to change it for August just for this cycle, but then the other bill for June, I'm not sure if that's going to create confusion or not, but the last bill that changed it to August didn't make it over the finish line, so I'm not sure if people's opinions changed or not, but if they haven't, then not that we don't have to act one way or another, but I guess what's our goal here?
Senator Murphy?
I've always thought an August primary was a better idea. I think it is feasible to do it for this year. I mean, but yeah, I agree, there has to be a push to get it done. But it obviously conflicts with the bill we already passed, so the Senate
Well,
position is established, right?
What I would suggest is that each of us, when we get into our caucus, talk about whether or not this is something we want to do or not want to do, and that way the next conversation that we have about it can be informed. So, but unless there's something else, we'll move on. The first one that I had was 384, and
Yes. Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the last bill, before I left and came back, 532, did we have a motion to put that on consent since?
we
Oh,
couldn't.
there were only 4 of us at
We
the
couldn't.
time. I'm
We-
sorry. I'm sorry. I was thinking
We
of.
could have a reconsideration motion, and then, but I don't know that Senator Avis, wants to do that, or,
We don't have to. I'm sorry.
I'm not opposed to any.
It's up to you.
I'll leave that to the discretion of the chair.
it's not gonna take a long time, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
it's
I'm sorry.
4
I
March.
forgot we weren't 5 at that time. I had to step out to speak to a group and then, but that's fine.
Okay, 384, the conversation that happened before Senator Abbas is that I think that we've done so much that we need to try to stop the pendulum somewhere in the middle and not let it swing too far to the other side. I think that the money that we appropriated in the budget is really just getting out to the people who can help us solve our problems. And that I think the vote is going to be divided on this one. So I guess I would be interested in a motion, maybe of interim study on this one. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion for interim study.
Okay, Senator Abbas moves interim study. I'll second it. Further discussion?
Well, a worthwhile goal. I understand some of the chair's concerns with this language, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to see if there are further housing investments that make sense to all of us.
Further discussion? All those in favor of minimum study, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No,
No.
And Senator Abbas, do you want to take that one out, or do you want me to do it?
I can do it.
Okay. Okay, moving right along. The next one is Senate Bill 534. And
Here, could we hold on that one? I have gone through the amendment.
Yep.
I did want to get together with the Secretary of State, 'cause I had a couple questions and wasn't able to do so the end of last week. But will this week.
okay, we have a request to hold it.
32, Mr. Chairman.
That was the one you did.
We already did that one.
Okay. No excuse absentee voting. And when we had talked about this one before, I said I didn't understand why I highlighted lines 4 and 5, but I did. Certainly, that's part of the reason that I don't support no excuse voting. That certainly we know that the Secretary of State's opinion is that there would need to be a constitutional change to expand voting other than on the election day. I can understand his, and certainly if you look back in the state of New Hampshire, that we used to do everything with town meeting. If you were there, you voted. If you weren't there, you didn't vote. So building on that and looking at the Constitution, where they opened it up for illness, and they voted, that I'm not in favor of this bill. So I had Senator Abbas has got his hand up.
I would make a motion of an expedient to legislate. If I don't support the bill.
And your motion was interim.
I would support it in expedient to legislate. Or interim study, but
Do I have a second? I'll second it.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I would just say that this is an issue that, we've talked about before. I respectfully disagree with the interpretation of the Secretary of State. We do make accommodations for other reasons, such as religious observances, which I think is completely appropriate. I think it's within the prerogative of the legislature to make those exceptions. And I do think that if you are to read the constitutional language very literally, this would exclude anyone who has a mental health illness from participating in our elections. And I think the other onerous problem for many people is that they do not view themselves as disabled or unwilling. They don't characterize themselves in that way. So signing an affidavit that says that they are, to them, is a severe problem. So for those reasons, I wouldn't support the ITL.
You and I have had conversations about this, and I'm certainly willing to talk about the signature that they have to make, and understanding also Senator Abbas's, that you have to be such that you are incapable of coming in to vote, or severe problem that would but right now, the way this is with pretty much the prohibition against any reason being required, I just can't support, and that's why I seconded the motion.
Thank you,
Senator.
Mr. Chairman. First of all, the term "no excuse absentee ballot" to me is like a legal impossibility. Your excuse is you're absent. So when they say no excuse absentee, but you don't have to necessarily be absent, to me, although it's not exactly the same, it's very similar to just early mail-in voting at that point. It's not quite the same, the process of getting the ballot, but that's essentially what this would amount to. And then if someone were to ever want to challenge someone's absentee ballot for the basis of what they requested it, I mean, you could do it, but there's no real practical way that person would really have a solid foundation to do it. I'm talking in reality. And I understand during the pandemic, we had that policy, I mentioned this before. There's a difference between people coming up with oh, this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen. I literally witnessed this myself, at least in just Salem, be abused. You had people who signed the affidavit saying that they couldn't vote in person because they were concerned for the health risks of being, voting in person. The same people who did that, they were even calling it early voting. But rather than correct them on that, these same individuals spent the day at the election polls the entire day. So I observed it be not used correctly. Now, with that being said, I don't support this. The Constitution is also very clear. Physical disability or physically absent. That's what it says. When it comes to other issues like religious observations, those are other protected classes in the Constitution by other amendments. So.
Okay, when I spoke about looking at the words, okay, I think that, certainly the almost 30 years that I worked at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, I did not know from day to day, especially on some of the higher priority projects, whether I was going to be able to get to Rochester in the time. So, I am going to be absent from, the city or town, if not in this bill, but in some future legislation, if we, put into those words where it is more likely than not, or some other term such that the person knows that, it's, if you don't get called in for overtime and you've been working overtime for 3 weeks straight, that it's okay. You did your best. You did the best that you could do. And certainly that's why I fight to keep the time when you can actually vote in person open. And I would certainly like to see it get back to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'm sure I would be outvoted by that. But again, these statements that we have in some of this are very cut and dry. You will be absent. Okay. Well, may not.
To the best of your knowledge,
Right.
is different.
Some kind of legal. And I was thinking, Senator Murphy, you and I are the unique ones here. We're the only ones without a law degree. So. But if you see what I'm saying,
They're not always advantages.
and to work that out,
Well,
I'm
thank you, Mr.
not
Chair.
prepared to do it in
I
this.
understand. I do appreciate your kind of thoughtful trying to tease out the circumstances and at least recognizing there are times when someone truly could apply for an absentee, but honestly, because of the legal requirements of the affidavit, hesitate. And I think that's unfortunate if anyone is not choosing to exercise their right because they feel that there may be some challenge to them doing so.
Senator Evans.
I understand the concern raised. I have not had anyone raise that concern to me directly. If your doctor or you're deemed physically disabled, or if it's a little different now. Obviously, most of the voting polls are, I hope all of them are, handicap accessible. I don't think that's the case. And if someone has travel plans and their flight gets canceled, and they vote absentee, and then their whatever conference gets canceled, I don't see that person ever getting prosecuted because there's no intent to violate the law. All right, they had a legitimate reason why they believed they were going to be absent for it. If they had surgery scheduled and it got pushed back, you have documentation to explain. Well, when I filled this out, this is what was happening. So I don't see that being the case. When the person's kind of just roaming around the district and open and notoriously calling it other things, that's the problem that you run into when our Constitution is very clear. So are they supposed to be physically absent? Yes, but I don't think that's, I've never heard of someone being prosecuted and that's the case.
I guess, Chair, if I may,
ma'am.
all thoughtful points. I think there's probably I won't put words in anyone's mouth, but a little bit of a philosophical difference that underlies it too, because I mean, from my perspective, what we're trying to do here on election law, right, is just set clear laws for how people vote. And I think the assumption underlying a no excuse absentee policy would be that, again, people are doing their best to make it to the polls. And I understand your anecdote. You know, one could also describe what you're saying as someone who was trying to make sure they could participate in the election as much as they could. And so it may be a good reason for us to support, you know, an absentee ballot in that case. That's a bigger discussion, but I think at the end of the day, there may be some common ground in understanding that, you know, a mom intends to vote after daycare pickup, but somebody won't put their shoes on to go to the polls, or, you know, someone intends to go on the way to work, but their coffee spills all over their jacket. I think that there are times that, you know, a no excuse absentee policy recognizes the reality of people's lives, and if it's easier for them to vote at a different time, it should be important enough to everybody to vote. And so, if it is, I would argue that our laws should encourage them to do that at any time that makes sense for them, and not try to dictate that in their lives. But that's a bigger conversation than the bill the pieces we are talking about today.
I would just add to that, the only mention of no excuse is an analysis statement of OLS. The bill does not say no excuse. You have to have an excuse, but it's yours.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the ones we delineate. But look, I think we made a lot of good points and had a thoughtful discussion. I don't, you know, I think I know how this is going to be resolved, and that's okay.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, motion is ITL. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
And the ayes have it. Senator Abbas, would you like to take that one out?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. That's where we are right now.
Okay.
And I don't know whether you were here that the one bill about pre-processing and stuff, I
We
have
need to
not
talk.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have
We
not
need to
had a
talk.
chance to look at that. And I would
I
like
know you
to
had some
find,
concerns, but I think there are things that could be addressed that would,
and part of that discussion was that if we did not require the outside envelope for anyone who votes in person at the town hall, would be one way to do part of that. Having, you know, 1 or 2 days where anybody that sends them in, that they could open them up instead of just on the Thursday, Friday, just to be able to look at the signatures and make sure they were signed properly, and then still allowing the maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday, whatever, for if they want to pre-process them, but they still can't open the inner envelope containing the ballot, or mark the checklist with the AV, which is the thing that the moderator is supposed to look for to make sure that they haven't voted in advance. But again, that's, you know, if you want to weigh in, those are the things that I expressed to Senator Susie, and I think that we might be able to find some common ground in that, so,
absolutely.
okay?
Motion to come out of executive
We
session?
have a motion to come out of executive session, seconded by Senator Murphy. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Our business of the day being complete, we are adjourned. But, Donna, you,
Yes.